For the wild narrative which I'm about to tell, I neither expect nor ask for belief. It would be mad to expect such a thing, in a case where my own senses reject their evidence. Yet I'm not mad, and I surely do not dream.
While there's no question these days that video games are a legitimate and valid art form, the medium does still suffer from a certain inclination towards disposability. As new platforms replace old and technology and graphics march ever forward, there seems to be little effort or interest in preserving or appreciating the past. Imagine if there were no films more than 10 years old available on Blu-ray, no music from the 1970s still on sale, or no books in print from the 20th century. It seems ludicrous, though perhaps we shouldn't be complacent. This is, after all, the future that streaming wants for us. But worse still, imagine if existing older material was all now unusable because the technology used to play it no longer exists. Yet the gaming scene is one where the past, by and large, seems to have been forgotten or dismissed for the old-fashioned graphics and clunky gameplay. While there's certainly a market online for retro gaming, this seems to be recreations rather than reissues, and classic titles are more likely to be remade or upgraded rather than simply re-released for new platforms. There doesn't seem to be a video game equivalent of Arrow Video issuing classic old titles, warts and all, that can be played on modern systems without the need for emulators and the like, which are not always the most reliable of systems. The closest would seem to be versions of Myst and one or two other games that are available in their classic form through app stores, but that seems to be very much the exception and very much one sort of game. Should anyone want to start issuing classic titles of the past in accessible forms, a good place to start might be with The Dark Eye, a groundbreaking 1995 game that was one of the first that genuinely felt like a work of art.
I'm so glad you came. I find that the pleasant company of my relations calms my nerves.
For the love of God, what you saw! Who's there? Sorry to disturb you, sir, but somebody or other heard a scream or some such.
She's alive. I know it.
Produced by Inkscape and created by Russell Lees, the game eschewed traditional ideas, gameplay and graphics, and instead carved out its own particular niche, using the then expansive capabilities of the CD ROM to push the very idea of what a game might be in weird new directions. As such, I would argue that it would hold up well now. It didn't look or feel like anything else that was around at the time, and so would probably feel much less dated, especially for a non-gamer audience. Based on the stories of Edgar Allan Poe, the game was basically a point-and-click puzzle, one that allowed the player to explore slowly the world it created without having to score points, solve puzzles, or defeat bosses to move on. If you do solve the puzzles, you'll be rewarded with hidden content, but you can simply work your way through the narrative without having to do so. Effectively, it gives you enough to hook you in and keep you involved, and as somebody who's often given up on games because I simply can't get out of a room fairly early in proceedings, that felt important. But it also has enough hidden mystery to pull you back in and encourage leisurely exploration that never feels like a dead end. The game feels like a Poe onion. The main narrative, in which the player arrives at a mysterious old house with a secretive owner, is an original story in the Poe style, and as you wander around looking for clues and secrets, you find yourself given access to other areas and mini-stories, inspired by the Cask of Amontillado, Berenice, and the Telltale Heart. As you further explore, you also discover other linear Poe stories hidden within these tales.
The Red Death had long devastated the country. No pestilence had ever been so fatal or so hideous. Blood was its avatar and its seal. The redness of the horror of blood. There were sharp pains and sudden dizziness, and then profuse bleeding at the pores. The scarlet stains upon the body, and especially upon the face of the victim, were the pest bands which shut him out from the aid and sympathy of his fellow men. The whole seizure, progress, and termination of the disease were the incidents of half an hour.
Some of them are read by legendary underground author William Burroughs, who also provides the voice of Uncle Edwin, the character that the player goes to visit at the start of the game. The atmospheric music was composed by Thomas Dolby, by this point a former pop star turned experimental musician, and another fascinating art figure involved with this curious project.
Sound and music are so often overlooked in multimedia, and yet Inkscape have seen the possibility of integrating it at a fundamental level. I really look forward to collaborating with them on Dark Eye and other titles in the future.
The graphics used a claymation stop-motion style that gave the game its unique and timeless visual edge, and featured eyeless characters with grotesquely exaggerated features. Like stop-motion in film and television, this method adds a sense of unreality and weirdness from the off, and ensures that the game looks like nothing else out there.
We have 28 characters in the Dark Eye. This is one of the characters called Fortunato. This is the character that in the famous Poe story that gets bricked in behind a wall. And so he's kind of a jester and kind of ridiculous. We had an artist design the heads of the characters, and then they went off to a sculptor and they were all sculpted. And then the process of casting them to foam latex and building the armatures, which are ball and socket armatures, so that they can move. The neck moves freely, the arms move freely.
The slow, methodical exploration required of the player, too slow for many a gamer it seemed, judging by some of the contemporary comments that themselves suggested a gaming culture that had yet to mature, somehow adds to the literary feel of the game. The player can explore the sections based on the Poe stories as either main character, victim or perpetrator, and the central narrative has a similarly uncertain sense of reality running through it, as the player is never quite sure of what's happening, only that there is no victory to be had. This is a game that has an ending, but there's no grand finale. You can't win this game, only complete it. If anything, the final boss here is your own character as you wrestle with reality and what is or isn't a dream within a dream.
Uncle Edwin? I'm alive, Uncle!
The full import of the lantern, the madness-inducing fumes, Henry's premonitions, all these came clear to me at once, and I could feel and hear a great rending, as of a mirror breaking, roll throughout the house, growing in volume and strength. The house around us, the vault, the lantern, Elise, all shattered into 100,000 shards, shattered as did the dark depths of my very soul.
The Dark Eye was available for playing on both the Mac and PC, but within a couple of years its operating system requirements were already out of date. By that time my own copy had disappeared, foolishly loaned to an unbalanced acquaintance who became so crazy that there was little to be gained from demanding it back. You can still find copies online to download and burn onto a disc if you still have a CD ROM player. I did this several years ago and it didn't work, even on an ancient iMac that should theoretically have played it. Similarly, attempts to run more recent downloads via emulators have not been successful either. Should anyone out there have a version that can be somehow played on a modern Mac OS by whatever magic is involved, then please get in touch. It's been a long time since I could do anything other than watch online playthroughs and clips. It may well be that The Dark Eye was ahead of its time, a game that pushed the limits of what gaming was and what gamers wanted. It wasn't a hit and is now almost forgotten. But this game should be recognised as one of the greatest art projects ever to emerge from gaming culture in the 1990s, and in any decent world would be available for new generations to explore and lose themselves in. The idea that a project like this, based on Poe, featuring William Burroughs and Thomas Dolby, has not simply slipped into obscurity but is also effectively lost to media is shameful. So what do you think? Did you play The Dark Eye at the time? Did you enjoy it, or did you find it to be pretentious nonsense? And what other CD ROM games would you love to see revived and made available for playing these days? Let us all know in the comments. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, then I'd appreciate it if you would hit the like button, and if you've yet to do so, subscribe to the Overlooked Hotel. And feel free to support us in our efforts to bring you stories like this through our assorted crowdfunding methods, be it Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, or whatever else. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.